Welcome to Part 3 in the LSE Student Academic Mentor, otherwise known as SAM, online training. This series of short online training videos will give you all the preparation you need to start mentoring successfully. Please watch these training videos carefully in order, as there will be follow-up questions for you to answer to ensure you have listened to the advice. In Part 1, you were introduced to the fundamental principles of mentoring itself and mentoring at LSE. In Part 2, we looked at your roles and responsibilities as a SAM and the commitments we expect you to make. In Part 3, we'll look at signposting and well-being in relation to your mentees and to yourselves. It will also provide you with essential information on how to signpost your mentee onto other services in the university when their support exceeds your role as a SAM. Here is an outline of what we'll cover in Part 3. We'll look at your mentees, minor problems they may have, signposting to relevant LSE services, confidentiality, safeguarding, and how to follow up successfully. And we'll also look at your well-being in terms of resilience, how to deal with problems, and how to respond to difficult meetings. Okay, so let's start with your mentees. As SAMs, your role is to provide support at a departmental level, primarily for academic queries, but also for questions around social activities and general life as a student within your department and as a student at LSE. And so queries may expand beyond just academic questions. Firstly, don't worry. Don't forget you've learned a lot since you started at LSE. Take a moment to think about where you are now in terms of understanding the school and where you were at the start of your first year. I bet you understand a lot more about the school now than when you started. You may already be able to relate to the problem your mentee wants to discuss and offer some advice. The majority of problems a mentee brings up are likely to be minor, and with help from you, they'll quickly realise their problem can be solved fairly easily. But if the problem exceeds your role as a SAM, we'll look later at some other avenues of support. With good knowledge of the support mechanisms and services at the LSE and in your department, you'll be able to signpost your mentee to the right place. What's important is to recognise when a person needs more help than you can give. SAMs are not counsellors and do not need to be, but SAMs do need to know the university well and where to direct their mentees to the right kind of help. Your role is to focus on the academic side of support and to make sure if it's a problem that goes beyond your role, your mentees are signposted to the right part of the university. As a SAM, you do not need to know everything, but you should know who to direct a mentee to if you can't help. This is one of the most important parts of your role as a SAM, so it's essential that you know both when to recognise a mentee's problem is too big for you to support, and who or what the mentee should engage with to get the right kind of support. With good knowledge of the support mechanisms and services at the LSE and in your department, you'll be able to signpost your mentee to the right place. What's important is to recognise when a person needs more help than you can give. SAMs are not counsellors and do not need to be, but SAMs do need to know the university well and where to direct their mentees to the right kind of help. Your role is to focus on the academic side of support and to make sure if it's a problem that goes beyond your role, your mentees are signposted to the right part of the university. Let's start with departmental support. This includes your undergraduate program administrator, who will know your department in and out and be an excellent source of support. The departmental manager, who knows the whole department in the kind of detail that means if they don't know the answer, then they will probably know who in the department does. An academic mentor, either yours or the mentees, are an excellent source of advice and guidance on academic and pastoral issues. In some departments, you'll find there are also undergraduate advisors, specifically there to support with undergraduate issues. And individual lecturers and GTAs can also be sources of support too. You've probably got to know a few in the last year and know already who may be most helpful. Don't forget the other professional services staff too. The link on this slide is just an example of the multitude of people in a typical department that could be able to help. But remember, you know your department well. Who have you found really helpful in the past?
In halls, there are multiple sources of support from wardens, sub-wardens, student hall committees, peer supporters and residential life officers. All names and contact details for each hall can be found on the website. At the school level as a whole, there is LSE Careers, including things like jobs on campus, careers advice, CV checks and information on internships. There's the Faith Centre, which offers support for any student and a quiet place for reflection. There's LSE Life, which will give one-to-ones and workshops on all aspects of studying. There's the Student Wellbeing Service, which we'll go into in a little more detail. There's the Student Services Centre, which we'll also go into in a little more detail in the next couple of slides. And there's the Students' Union, where you can get independent advice and it's open to all students.
Support you can access in the Student Services Centre includes visa advice if you are having problems or issues with your visa, the Financial Support Office who can help students access hardship funds or support with scholarships, Fees, Income and Credit Control who can support with questions about fees for accommodation or tuition, as well as support with international loans. You can also collect emergency short-term loans. You can also collect certificates of registration for council tax and things like that. And here you can also access the off-campus student support scheme.
And support you can access from the Student Wellbeing Service includes the peer supporters, who are fellow students trained to help students talk through difficulties and anxieties, the Student Counselling Service, which is open to every student. There's also drop-in counselling Monday to Friday from 2:45 p.m. and the Disability Wellbeing Service, which offers support with long-term health conditions and learning difficulties.
Not sure where to direct your mentee? There are several options. Double check the Moodle page, ask at LSE Life Reception or Student Services Centre Reception, or email us at lselife@lse.ac.uk and we'll be able to help. So that's all well and good, but what do you do if your student needs more help? And if your student needs to be directed beyond your support, how do you deal with confidentiality and safeguarding? There are certain important exceptions when you can break a mentee's confidentiality, and it is important that these are recognised by both you and your mentees. You can break confidentiality in the following cases. If you and your mentee both agree that you can speak to someone else about an issue or problem, whether that is an academic from your department or student services or someone similar. If you believe that there is a risk of harm to the mentee or any other person based on something that the mentee has said, or that a crime has been or is going to be committed. In these cases, you are obliged to report the issue to a member of LSE staff. For example, staff in your department, the Counselling Service, Student Services Centre or LSE Life. In an emergency, the LSE emergency number is 0207 955 6555 and the public emergency number is 999. Further information about emergencies and what to do if you're worried about someone is available on the Student Wellbeing Services web pages. Therefore, if it's an immediate threat on campus, call campus security on 0207 955 6555. If it's an immediate threat off campus, dial 999. The university has also introduced a safe contact scheme where members of staff have been specially trained to offer support with bullying, harassment and sexual violence, and you can find the safe contacts through this link. If your mentee would prefer to report something anonymously, or your mentee doesn't want to report something but you still feel something has to be reported, you can also use this Report It link. You can access any of these links by downloading your own copy of the slides from the Moodle page.
Let's look at following up. It's a good idea if you've signposted your mentee to another service to check in a few days later and make sure they've actually gone to get the help they needed and feel okay about this. Sometimes it can be hard to actually take someone's advice, even if it's correct, so just check in gently and make sure they are okay. So always try to check in with your mentee if you signposted them somewhere. Make sure they got the right help, make sure they're satisfied with the answer, and make sure that they know they can still come to you for other things. Okay, let's look now at your well-being. Don't forget, your well-being is just as important to look after as your mentees. The next few slides will look at ways you can help your own well-being. You've become a SAM because you want to help, but anyone offering any sort of support to another person needs to have a certain amount of resilience. While you volunteer to be a SAM because you want to help, the experience can sometimes be a little different to your expectations. So don't be disheartened if you have mentees that don't respond at all, you have mentees that were keen and then stop, you find Lent term will be a lot quieter than the Michaelmas term. By Lent term, a lot of students are far more settled, so don't worry about this. You may get your mentees all at once or gradually across the term, and you may get less mentees than you hoped for. Remember, the irony of being a good source of support is that the ultimate goal is to not be needed. Don't take it personally if your mentee doesn't need you anymore. We've already covered this in part 2, but it's worth stressing again. You're a volunteer. This isn't a job, so if you are having problems with the role, just let us know. It's okay if you need to stop or just take a break.
Being a mentor and spending time helping and advising someone else might sometimes be a little draining. You need to look after yourself well so that you can continue to have the physical and mental energy to support others. Here are some top tips to help you find the right balance. Have a fun activity post-meeting planned. Sports, a movie to watch, catch up with some friends or some coffee can all help you relax a little bit. Write it down. Put tough experiences on a piece of paper and then throw it away if you need to. Talk it through with others. Speak to LSE Life, family, friends, to the counselling service if necessary, or one of the peer supporters. If it gets too difficult, let us know. And go for a walk to refresh your mind. We've all recently found the benefit of going for walks for our mental health, so this is an important thing to remember.